Alright, so War of the Rohirrim is going to be coming out in a couple of days. Or at least here in the United States it's going to be coming out on, December 13th? But I guess the movie's already premiered overseas. And we've got a couple of box office projections for this War of the Rohirrim movie, and I wouldn't say that they look all that good. Now, I'm recording this video on Tuesday, December 10th, so 3 days before War of the Rohirrim is going to be out, at least in the United States. But, again, it is out overseas now, so we do have some numbers for it. Here on Variety, we have Moana 2 hit $600 million at global box office. Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim fizzles overseas with $2 million debut. It fizzles. That doesn't sound good. And it's only made $2 million so far. I like to go to Box Office Mojo for up-to-date numbers. They have it at $1.8 million right now, but that's still very, very early. It's going to change. Now we'll see how it does when it comes out in the US in a few days, but the early indication, at least from the overseas debut, is that this movie's not doing too well. Now I've got two links pulled up that have projections for this movie in the United States, or domestic projections. First one here is Box Office Theory. It's got a chart for the movies coming out soon. And we have Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim from Warner Brothers, December 13th, and it's got 3-day low-end opening, $8 million, 3-day high-end opening, $13 million, 3-day pinpoint opening forecast, $10 million, domestic total low-end $23.5 million, high-end $37 million, domestic total pinpoint forecast $26 million. And then the next link that I have, it's an article from CBR.com. Headline reads, War of the Rohirrim's box office prospects prove that anime isn't invulnerable. And this article, it's from last week. And I'm just going to read this little bit from the article. Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim is currently poised to have an opening weekend box office haul that's under $30 million US, with even this being somewhat optimistic. To be fair, this isn't an entirely awful box office projection, though this ultimately depends on how big the movie's budget is. Nothing concrete has been stated about the movie's budget, and this will ultimately be make or break. War of the Rohirrim could end up being a low-key box office hit if the budget is low enough, but if the budget is near that of Hollywood animated films, it might instead fall flat on its face. Given the fact that the opening weekend will likely be its highest box office haul for any weekend for its release, its arguably paltry sum will do a lot of heavy lifting. So they're projecting $30 million US over the opening weekend, and they're saying even that's kinda optimistic. Now me, I've done a couple videos on War of the Rohirrim, and if you want my opinion on this movie, it's this. They're taking the story of Helm Hammerhand and they're changing it, and the reason why they're changing it is to modernize it. More specifically, to put the modern day girl boss trope into it. And me, I don't like how they're changing it. I don't like how they're modernizing it. Like a lot of other people, I'm pretty sick and tired of everything being updated for modern audiences, quote unquote. My opinion is, yeah, Tolkien's stories, his works, they don't exactly meet modern day standards when it comes to diversity or inclusion or representation or any other buzzwords like that. But me, I don't care at all if you don't like that. This is Tolkien's story, so if you're going to make an adaptation of anything in Tolkien's work, you stick to what Tolkien wrote, period, end of discussion. What they're doing with this War of the Rohirrim movie, what they're doing with the story of Helm Hammerhand is they're taking that story and they're girl bossing it. And my opinion on this is that the act of taking somebody else's story, in this case Tolkien's story, the act of taking somebody else's story and injecting your activism into it, injecting your messages into someone else's story, that is completely and utterly disrespectful to that author. And that's what they're doing here. And my opinion on this sort of thing is that if they're going to be modernizing it, if they're going to be changing it, then no, I don't want to give them my money. So me, no, I don't have any plans on seeing this War of the Rohirrim movie. Now, when it comes to box office projections for this movie, how much money is it going to make in theaters? I'm going to be dead honest with you. I have no idea how this movie's going to do in theaters. Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. We do have some projections now that I just read you, but as the marketing for this movie started picking up, and again, I do not like the direction they're taking, but in terms of whether this movie will do well in theaters, I had no idea the whole time. I was not at all sure whether this movie would do well or not. Now, Rings of Power came out, 3 years ago, something like that? At least the first season, it premiered, I think, in, 2021? And I remember that when the marketing for season 1 picked up for Rings of Power, when they started releasing trailers, when they started to release behind-the-scenes footage, that kind of stuff, I remember everybody overwhelmingly rejected that show. I mean, everyone unanimously hated what they were doing. Yeah, you're going to have some people who loved the show, but most people did not. And yeah, I remember Amazon and other people doing some shady things when it came to bad reviews for the show, negative comments on their trailers, deleting them, things like that. But anyway, when they started marketing for Season 1 of Rings of Power, Lord of the Rings fans overwhelmingly rejected what they were doing. And when trailers for the War of the Rohirrim movie started coming out, I look and I try to read what the temperature in the room is. I'll read comments a little bit and try to see what people think, that sort of thing. And the sense that I got when looking at reception for this animated movie coming up is that while Lord of the Rings fans were overwhelmingly rejecting the Amazon Rings of Power show, I did not get that same sense with War of the Rohirrim. Certainly I'm seeing a good number of people that are upset with them modernizing it, but the sense that I got was that it didn't seem like everyone overwhelmingly hated the direction this movie was taking. And from what I read, it looks like some Lord of the Rings fans out there, they saw how bad Rings of Power was, and so they want to see this movie hoping that it's going to be better. So yeah, the sense that I got was that not everybody is against the changes that they're making to the story of Helm Hammerhand. And that is something where you'd have to tell me whether you agree or disagree. Maybe you're seeing that no, a lot of people don't like what they're doing with this movie. But the bigger point here is that this whole time as marketing picked up, I had no idea how this movie might end up doing in theaters. Now from what I'm seeing, opening weekend projections for this movie are not too high, but there are a couple other factors that need to be considered. Number one, this is not a live action movie, this is an anime movie, so I guess this isn't quite some big Hollywood blockbuster movie. And how exactly does that affect its box office potential? I don't know. And then the second question here is, even if this movie doesn't end up being an enormous hit, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of money, the other question is, what is this movie's production budget? And as far as I've looked, I haven't seen any information on that. So I have no idea what this movie's budget is. If any of you have seen anything, by all means let me know, but yeah, the movie's budget here, I have no idea what it is. Now if these box office projections end up being real but the movie has a really small production budget, then there's still a chance that this film can make a profit. But if War of the Rohirrim has, say, a Disney level production budget of like $250 million, then a $25 or $30 million opening weekend is not going to cut it. Again, it's going to depend on how big this movie's budget is. For the record, I doubt this movie has a $200 million budget. I'm betting that it's a lot smaller than that, but yeah, I have no idea what the actual number is. So the movie's out in a few days, we'll just have to wait and see how it does. Me, again, I don't plan on seeing this movie. If I see that they're taking a story and they're updating it for modern audiences, I prefer not to give them my money. And since they're changing Tolkien's story of Helm Hammerhand specifically, they're going to be girl bossing it. Me, I'm not exactly going to be rooting for this movie to succeed. Bye everyone.